So now we're going to talk about the timeline on finances, right? And why is this important? Because finances takes a lot of time, right? So somewhere about October, January, this is the time where you should be bothering all your bank managers. You should be talking to lenders like Prodigy Finance. You should be talking to everyone in the country possible and try getting loan quotes. You know where you're going, you know which country you're going, you're putting in the legwork to do that. So it's very essential that you get loan quotes, which is also called as a rate card or a quote card. It's going to talk about a lot of facets about what that loan will mean to you. And I'm going to cover that in a couple of minutes. February to April, after you get your admission, you need to decide that what loan offer makes the best sense for you. And that is where I'm going to talk on a concept called APR, annual percentage rate. It's a comparison tool to compare loan offer 1 to 2 to 3. May and June, after you've secured your loan letter, that's when you go ahead with your I-20 and visa process. July to August, you start exploring scholarships and discounts because a lot of these scholarships come in later. A lot of these assistantships comes in later. So if I were to borrow, let's say $40,000, and I get a scholarship worth $5,000, you ideally shouldn't be taking $40,000 worth of loan. You should be taking 35 because the scholarship money is free money, and there is nothing better than a free money in this time of the year, right? And especially in this industry, because you're not taking on a debt. And that $5,000 in terms of debt will mean a lot to you over the tenure of the loan. It's a lot of money when you calculate it amongst 10 or 15 years of repayment. August to September, like I say, you're going to ensure your loan disbursement happens and it's paid upfront to the university, and August to September is when that happens. After September, which is 2 years later, if you're going for a 2 years MS program, your study and your grace period kicks in, and that's where the repayments is captured. So this is a good uh, comprehensive breakdown on how finances play in respect to the earlier flowchart I spoke about. We are 14 minutes into the webinar. In interest of time, I am going to keep moving. Great. Now I'm going to break down on all these stages I spoke about. So what happens when you do your post applications? You all have taken, 80% of you have taken your GRE. You're going to go ahead and you're going to submit 5 applications right now, right, to your respective universities. So what you're going to do is once you submit those applications, you're going to go ahead and you're going to get your loan quotes from everyone possible. What are you going to look at from the loan quotes? You're going to look at your loan terms. Is it a collateral free loan? Is it a cosigner free loan? You're going to look at the documentation they require. Do they require hard? Do they require soft copy? You're going to look what type of documents do they require. Do they require documents of the cosigner, or do they require documents of you? And sometimes these documentation can take a lot of time. So be prepared for it, because depending on the type of your loan you take, you would be required to submit those many documents. Then you're going to look at your loan amount, right? So let's say if I was going for an MS program in the US for 2 years, and every year costed me 40,000 cost of attendance, which is living plus tuition fee, I as an individual will have to ask myself, Pritish, how much out of that 40,000 can I fund, and how much from that 40,000 I need a loan for, which is your loan amount. So you'll need to figure out that. And then I see some questions about interest rate. I'm even going to capture that. You're going to look at what the interest rates are. What is the interest rate? What is a fixed rate? What's a variable rate? Are there any hidden costs? And we're going to talk about APR, which is a comparison tool, which will help you compare offers with one university, one loan provider with and the other. And then you're going to retain all those loan quotes from the time you submit those applications, and the minute you get your admit, that is where you're going to act, because you don't need to reach out to anyone there. You know what your criteria is, you know which lender is giving you which terms, and you'll be very quick to move. And you would have already developed a relationship with that lender, which is the most important thing, because you do not want to be with the masses applying for loan. You want to have everything secured way in hand before. So when you get your admit, you can go ahead and you can close it in. Stage 2, right? I spoke about annual percentage rate. I can speak about this for half an hour, but I don't want to. It can get quite compact. and complex. What it is basically in simple terms is annual percentage rate includes the impact of all hidden costs that a financial service or a loan product has. In our case, we only have one fee, which is a one-time admin fee, which is paid from Prodigy Finance's end. In other lenders, you have something called an administration fee, you have a sanction letter fee, you have a currency conversion fee, and you even have an insurance fee. And this is not built into the original offer. So what APR does is it exposes all these costs uh, across lenders, and it tells you what your rate of interest really is. So rate of interest is not your APR. APR will always be higher than your rate of interest, and it is not your rate of interest, right? It is just a tool to show you that percentile increase on what these facets are. So it's a universal term. In India, it's not a mandate by the RBI to talk about APR, and that's why they don't mention it. But please go to your bank manager or your loan assistance provider and ask them for the APR for that quote they've given you. They're going to work out the math of all these four things over here, and they're going to give you an APR. And we even have a loan repayments calculator. It's free on our website. It's actually exclusively developed for our loan product. You can go ahead and you can play around with it. So we're now going to move to stage 3. There's a typo on the slide, so my apologies on that. This is the stage 3 where you basically have received your quotes, you have your admit, and now you got to do what is your I-20 and your visa processes. So your I-20 amount should match the visa authority review. Basically, you should have enough of funds for your first year of cost of attendance in terms of liquid. And a loan sanction letter is also considered liquid. So what the visa interviewer here wants to see is that you have your first year COA pretty much sorted. They also want to look at your plan for the year 2. So in our case, in a Prodigy Finance loan letter, we approve you for loan 1, year 1, and we pre-approve you for year 2. So you have both the amounts mentioned on the very same loan sanction letter. So it's not really a problem. You could tell your visa officer, hey, I'm approved for year 1, and this is how much I'm going to be borrowing from year 2 from them. The reason we do this is because we want you to have the flexibility to choose if you want lesser funds in year 2 or not. I'm going to talk a bit about this when I talk about the Prodigy Finance process in general. Always check hidden costs, and this is where APR comes in. A lot of NBFCs charge you 1% of the loan amount. So if your loan is, let's say, 70 lakhs, around 70,000 needs to be paid upfront in order to get a loan sanction letter, because that loan sanction letter is what you will need to use for your I-20 and your visa processes, right? So always keep that in mind while you're exploring the concept of APR and comparing loan offers. This is stage 4, right? Which is your pre-departure. You've gotten your visa, you've gotten your admit, and you have your funding. You arrive in the country of study. You look for things such as opportunities. In this case, those could be scholarships that they pretty much give out at a much later state. It could even be housing. You need to decide on where you're going to be living, on campus or off campus. You're going to research other things such as which telecom provider makes sense for you, which bank should you be having an account with, because you're pretty much going to be there for a long period of time, right? If you are doing an MS with 3 years OPT, you are going to be there at least for half a decade. That's good 5 solid years. So it's very good practice at that point to have a lot of this work and research done. So when you arrive in the US, it's a good time for you to go and implement these opportunities. Once you arrive on campus, what you really need to make sure is that your disbursement has happened. So in our case, it works slightly differently. But if you're taking a loan from somewhere else, you really need to make sure that it has come to your account and you need to transfer it to the school. So that obligation is on you. And then currency conversion costs can be passed on to the students. That results in a higher APR. It's not built onto your original loan. In our case, we directly pay in USD and you repay back in USD. So there's no risk in terms of those shocks that you absorb. And then there's no risk of missed payments or late fees because we work with all 500 schools directly across the world and disciplines. And we know when a certain student is arriving on campus, and we take care of those things pretty much on the back end quite seamlessly. And that's what we've been doing for over 10 years. So in your case, I saw some students about will we cover loan living expenses? In Prodigy Finance's case, yes. If you were going for an MS program in the US, a top 100 MS program in the US, we will cover up to 100% living plus tuition expenses. So let's say if you did opt for that, and let's say you applied for 80% of loan, we would send the money to the school, and you would get the remaining money of that funds which were sent to the school onto your personal account for your personal expenses, right? So we send the entire money to the school, they take the tuition part and they pay you the living expenses part, right? So that way they understand that the money has actually come from Prodigy Finance, and it's very seamless. You don't need to worry about conversions in this case. You would get that value into your personal US account. The next part is your study and grace period, right? Which is, in many cases, it's called many things. But what happens is with Prodigy Finances, you don't require to pay interest during your study and grace period. In this case, it would be the first 30 months, because MS programs are for 24 months on an average with 6 months of grace. And usually other lenders will ask you to pay the interest component, as the student has no income during that period, right? But in our case, you don't need to pay anything upfront. You're under no obligation to make any payments during the study and grace period. Uh, they also, in some cases, some lenders have some restrictions on prepayments, which are basically you're not allowed to pay for the first 6 months of study, and you're not allowed to pay more than 3 times per year and things like that. In our case, so far for the last 10 years, this has never been a problem, and we do not penalize you if you choose to do the third point on the slide, or even if you choose to do the second point. Basically, you don't need to pay during the study and grace period, but if you are in a position where you can afford this and you can pay even during while you're working, while you're studying, you can go ahead and do it. I'm going to talk a bit more about the Prodigy aspects in the next slide, because I want this to be more generic to help all of you understand these terms. Great. So then comes your repayments. So basically what happens is after your study and grace period, you will have to start making monthly repayments, right? And this is irrespective to wherever you're taking a loan from. It depends on the currency at times, and sometimes it depends on how you're repaying. In our case, the Prodigy Finance repayments happen after the 7th month after classes end. The EMI is pretty much disclosed, which is your monthly payments on your platform and your monthly statements. Even when you apply for the loan, let's say if you go right now and apply for a loan, in 20 minutes, you will know what your rate of interest is. Some people are asking me what the rate of interest is for Prodigy Finance. The best way to answer that question is submit that 20-minute application, and you will get to know pretty much on your computer screen what is your rate of interest. The Prodigy Finance loan has two facets. In terms of the US, it has a fixed component, a fixed variable percentage, which can be anywhere between 5 to 8.5%, anywhere between that. So you could get a 7, you could get a 6.5, you could get a 7.5, and that rate never changes. And then you have your variable component. Since this will be a USD loan, the variable rate will be LIBOR, and that is somewhere around 2% this quarter. I do see a lot of people right now asking me questions to reply on chat. I would want you guys to understand I am currently talking and trying to make this very interactive. So please bear with me. I'm going to finish the presentation deck very soon, and then I am going to be answering these questions. I see a lot of questions which are very specific. Some are even specific to the Prodigy Finance uh, process. So in that case, we have a service team. I will not be able to take them up at this webinar. That is specific to you and your application. And we have a team which is pretty much working around the clock. So feel free to just call up a service team.